Hey, what's up guys? Threat Level Midnight here, and today I'm going to show you how to abide by TSA and airline regulations when you're flying with a gun. I'm about to take a trip and fly out of state, so I'll show you what it takes to comply with all the regulations, whether you're flying with a rifle or a handgun. The methods I'm going to show you today I've used for the last 12 years or so. I've flown with a gun on every single flight I've been on, and these are things that have worked for me every time. I've had some friends that have flown with me that have struggled with different types of cases, different types of locks, but today I'll show you what works for me and what has worked for the last 12 years or so. So to start, we'll get into what I use for my handguns, and I'll use a different case this year, but lately I've been using just a Flambeau. It's just a hard plastic case, and you'll see that it has 2 holes for a lock in it. Now TSA regulations, which we'll go over in a minute, are going to require that you have a hard-sided case that can be locked. So they say specifically that the case that your gun came from the factory might not work. So an example of a factory case that doesn't work is going to be like your Glock boxes. So on this particular Glock box, there's no place to put a lock. Now you could take like your handgun lock and wrap the cable around and then see if that plays. It might work, it might not, but the easiest way to get a gun on board is to have 2 locks on it with holes that keep it secure, because the regulations specifically say that it can't be easily opened. So they don't want to be able to pry it open at all. So anytime they can pry your case open, they can consider that easily accessible for your firearm. And even if TSA is okay with it, the particular airline that you're flying on might not be. And I've had that problem, and I'll just say with Southwest, a buddy of mine had a case that could be pried open in the center a little bit, and they told him that he couldn't fly with it. In the end, we ended up working some things out, but it was still just a complete headache. So when I fly, I keep this little kit handy. So it's basically just my gun box, and then inside I'll have my 2 locks with my keys, and then I'll keep like a hard plastic ammo box. So TSA says that you can fly with loaded mags. Some airlines I found don't want you to have the mags loaded. They want your ammunition in a factory container or a plastic or cardboard box. So, you know, these things are, you know, $1.50 a piece. You can hold 50 rounds in there. If you're just taking a carry gun, that's no big deal. So I'll take one of these little boxes. And then the other thing I like about these little plastic boxes is it saves space over some factory ammo. So this year I'll be flying with a full-size gun, and a full-size box of ammunition is significantly larger than this little plastic box. And I'm going to use 2 different calibers when I fly, so I can just throw both calibers in the same box and save some space. So once you lock your box up and you go to the ticket counter, you need to tell them that you're flying with a firearm. People at the counter are going to have varying degrees of experience with firearms. So some of them kind of nut up and want you to go to TSA and go to the security checkpoint immediately and let TSA handle it. And some of them will just ask you to, hey, open the box, and they'll ask you if it's unloaded. You'll say yes, and they have you fill out a little card. So a couple examples of what they'll give you here. So this one's from Delta, and last time I flew with handguns, all they did was stick this on the outside of the box with these little sticky tabs. After I told them it was unloaded, I signed it, they signed it, and it just says firearms unloaded. And then I can just throw this box in my, my check bag. If you're flying with rifles, this one's from Southwest. This is just a firearms declaration tag, similar thing, but you have your name, address, your like your flight number on there, and then it has your outgoing and arrival airport, and basically you sign the back of it and they throw it inside the box with you. They recommend that you use a couple of locks. You can also use the TSA locks. I will say this, if you use a TSA lock, which I have one right here, it'll say TSA on it. It has kind of a universal key pattern that they can access. So if you use TSA locks, they will be able to open it. Of course, they could always cut your locks if they want to. They'll tell you that. If they need to get to it, they can cut your locks. But if you use a TSA lock, they can get to your stuff. And the recent past, maybe the last 2 times I've flown, they've had me lock my zippers on my check bag. So I do carry a TSA lock for that. That makes my life a lot easier. If they decide to be arbitrary and enforce a rule that's not in writing anywhere, they'll say, hey, we want your bag locked. I've used this little TSA lock before, and I use my own locks on the box. They've also just zip tied the bag shut as well. But that's pretty much pistols in a nutshell. Make sure they're unloaded. You can leave ammo in the mags, but you might run the risk of an airline being picky about it, and they might tell you, hey, you need to unload your mags and it needs to be in a box. And if you don't have a box, then you're kind of out of luck because you're already at your ticket counter and you're trying to get where you're going. Flying with rifles, Very similar, but a little bit different, especially with the cases that are available. I fly with Pelican cases, and I do this one because I have Pelican cases and they're super durable. But your luggage takes a beating on a plane, so I trust these ones. There's plenty of good cases out there. This is just what I happen to have. The Pelican ones, they have 4 locks right here. These ones have little grommets, like reinforcements on the outside too. But what you'll notice is if you unbuckle a Pelican case, what you'll find is that you're not going to get any flex to open the center of this. They're not going to be able to pry it open, so it won't be classified as an easily openable case like some of the other ones are, where they want you to have 2 to 4 locks on there instead. They might tell you that you need to have locks on every single hole on the case. Last year I was flying with a friend, and he was flying with kind of your typical, cheap plastic case, and it's like, yeah, is this good enough? Yeah, maybe. This particular one only has 1 lock hole in the middle, so this one would never fly. He had one that had locks on either side, but what they found is that when they unbuckled the center, they could pretty much open the whole box. And if they can open the whole box, they're going to tell you that that's a no-go. So what ended up happening is they wanted him to put more locks on. We were at the ticket gate. We were running a little late. We couldn't find locks. We ended up getting a supervisor out there from Southwest, and he agreed that, like, hey, we'll just zip tie it shut, and as long as it's sealed up and it's zip tied, we'll just count that as good. But that's just a problem that we encountered at the ticket counter. So this year, I'm going to switch over to a Pelican Vault. I happened to stumble across a Pelican Vault. I'll see how that one goes. It's a little bit deeper than the Flambeau one that I was using, but we'll see how it goes. It has 2 lock ports on it, just like the other one does, and hopefully it can hold just as much. But once you lock your guns up, you may or may not get sent to a TSA checkpoint. That's the airline can always refer you to the TSA checkpoint, especially when they don't know exactly what they're doing or what they're looking at. They might not know the rules about it. So a lot of times you'll sign the declaration and they'll say, hey, just go to TSA, take your bag over there, and then they'll deal with it. So you take it over there. I've had a gun lost once, and it was in a big Pelican case that I just had out, but it was back to me within a couple hours at the airport. I didn't leave the airport until I had it. And a lot of times when you get to your baggage carousel, it's not going to be any baggage with a gun in it. It's not going to come out on the carousel. It's going to go where like the lost baggage goes. So you have to go to the counter and get your bag from there. That's the last probably 5 flights I've been on, is all guns have gone into like the lost baggage counter customer service. As far as local laws go, TSA isn't going to jam you up for abiding by local laws wherever you're coming from or going. So let's say you're coming from a free state and you're flying into California for whatever reason, they're not going to look at your mags and say, hey, this isn't a 10-round mag. You can't fly with this. They don't care about that. That's not their job. They don't know everyone's local laws and regulations. If you're flying with an AR-15 that's not broken with some sort of like bullet button or block on there, they don't care. It's not in their wheelhouse to enforce those rules. All they care about is that you're abiding by their regulations with the ammunition separate from the gun, and the gun is locked up and unloaded. And as long as you do that, you'll be fine. But I've had a handful of experiences with different people, and some people are really cool about it at the counter. Some people, you can tell, are really scared of guns, so they don't know what to do. They call a supervisor right away. They make it seem like you're doing something wrong. But you're not, and it's really not a big deal. And over the years, I don't know how many flights I've been on with guns. I've never encountered some sort of catastrophe where I wasn't able to get on a plane, or I missed a flight, or my guns didn't end up making it to me. So as long as you follow those little rules, you'll get on a plane no problem, and should be able to keep yourself safe wherever you're going.